What up, everybody? Today I want to talk about one of the biggest mysteries of the Power universe that could actually play a key role in Tommy's next chapter in Power Legacy after Power Book Force concludes. And that's the missing chapter of Tommy's story. Where was he during the time period when he left New York at the conclusion of OG Power to when he reappeared at the end of Ghost Season 1 when he shot up Monet's bar gunning for Tasha and killing Al in the process? Before leaving when Monet returned fire, and as Tasha looked out the window, she saw Tommy's blue Mustang pulling off. In the days leading up to Tommy initially leaving, first he killed Joe Proctor for being a snitch. And as some time had passed, he thought he was in the clear until Ghost figured out it was Tommy who killed Joe. And when Tommy gave Jason Mitchell the drop that Ghost was trying to kill him, Ghost told Joe's cousin, Benny Savello, capo in the Savello mob, that Tommy killed Joe when Benny started pressing him about Ghost initially giving him wrong information. This led to Benny showing up at Tommy's door and Tommy killing Benny. Then Tommy used his ambulance gear to take Benny to a junkyard where they demolished the ambulance with Benny in it. When Kate picked Tommy up from the junkyard, he told her that New York wasn't safe for him anymore. And later when eating breakfast at Kate's, he mentioned going to California. Then Tommy got tied to the Savello family even more when he found out that Joe's daughter, Elisa Marie Proctor, had a recording of Tommy killing Ruiz that he thought was gone. Because of that, Tommy ended up snatching up Elisa Marie, trying to get the copy of the recording. Either though Tommy later dropped Elisa Marie back off at home unharmed when he went to try to save Ghost. But after Ghost was shot by Tariq, and Tommy got the envelope from Ghost's will with the paperwork for his Mustang, he took off out of town, leaving New York behind. But right before leaving town, Tommy had unfinished business to handle, and before killing Spanky, he told him that he was headed to California to start a new organization. And at this point is when the missing chapter of Tommy's story begins, with Tommy leaving New York at the end of Power episode 613, on the way to what we thought was going to be LA. One theory is that there's no missing chapter at all, that Power Book 4 started immediately after OG Power, and as Tommy was leaving New York when he was on the way to LA is when Power Book Force began, and Tommy never made it to Cali. But if that's the case, there's a couple holes in the story from Power Book Force, because it never showed Tommy going back to New York the first time at the end of Ghost Season 1, and neither was it ever mentioned on the show. Keeping in mind that Tommy ultimately faked his death when he went back to New York at the end of Ghost Season 1. And with that said, in the second episode of Force, Tommy had to give a cop his license and registration, and at this point he told Diamond that he wouldn't even have a parking ticket to his name. So Tommy already had fake identification at that point, indicating that he already faked his death in New York. Also, keeping in mind by the time Season 2 had started, the Chicago feds had already figured out that Tommy faked his death in New York. There was also the scene at the end of Force Season 1 when they showed Agent Medina, Blanca Rodriguez, and Jenny Sullivan. At this point, we got a clue where Force was on the timeline, as Medina mentioned to Jenny Sullivan that Cooper Sachs handed it to her in court, talking about when he was one of Tariq's lawyers and when he beat the double murder case when Jenny was the prosecutor. So this lets us know that Force Season 1 ended around the same time as Ghost Season 2. But also keep in mind that Ghost Season 2 had a 3-month time jump at the end before Season 3 began. And this was the summer of 2022, approximately June through August. And this is the same time frame of Force Season 2. Because at one point Tommy texted Miguel and said Christmas in July. And with that said, another clue that Tommy didn't go straight to Chicago is that Ghost got shot in August of 2020. And when Tommy got to Chicago, it was wintertime because there was snow on the ground. So this lets us know that some time had passed since Ghost got shot in August of 2020 to when Force Season 1 had started. That also matches up with the season being winter at the end of Ghost Season 1, because when Season 2 started, Carrie Milgram mentioned it was the start of the spring term. But with that said, I don't know the exact time frame of Ghost Season 1. Tommy's missing chapter, it was either around 4 or 5 months or 16 or 17 months. Because the beginning of Season 2 was the start of the spring term and it was winter time. But we also know that the start of Season 3 was the beginning of September 2022, the fall term. So 2 years had passed by Season 3 of Ghost since Tariq shot Ghost. But what isn't known is if Tommy came back to New York the first time, if it was winter of 2020 or 2021, going into Season 2 of Book 2. If I was guessing, the missing chapter was only about 4 or 5 months, and he came back in the winter of 2020 or early 2021. And that Season 2 of Book 2 spanned the course of a year and a half, and not Season 1. And that would make sense why Tommy was still struggling, trying to process life without Ghost and moving past New York at the beginning of Season 1 of Force, because it had only been a few months. So the times and events seemed to match up when Tommy arrived in Chicago after the events of Book 2 Season 1. But at the same time, it's never once been said that Tommy actually went to California either. Tommy never said anything about his time in California, any potential connections he made there, or anything. So this leaves the question, did Tommy ever actually make it to California in the first place? At the beginning of Force Season 1, Tommy was talking to his California contact, Rudolfo, that he met through Jason Mitchell, about when he was going to get to California. But at the same time, it never clarified if Tommy was coming back to Cali after going to New York to try to take out Tasha after she snitched, or if this was his initial time going there. When Tommy first got to Chicago and was at his grandmother's house, he got a call from Rudolfo telling him he was late and that he had supposed to been in Cali the day prior. And he was starting to think that he was wrong about Tommy, that Tommy might not be reliable because he was out there making moves while Tommy was doing whatever he was doing. Tommy got another call from Rudolfo the next day that he ignored as he was researching the two biggest players in Chicago, CBI and Walter Flynn, before going to visit his grandmother and finding out he had a brother. Later that night, Rudolfo called Tommy again, pressing him about where he was, and told Tommy he needs to roll back with the attitude because Tommy was talking to his boss. When Tommy told Rudolfo that he was nobody's employee, when he had to get off the phone because the Northside Irish was pulling up on him. So Rudolfo was pressing Tommy like he had been there before and was waiting for him to get back. But again, he never said anything to clarify this, like when are you getting back? And with Rudolfo trying to say he was Tommy's boss, we would think this would have been established over the past few months when Tommy was there. Then at the end of episode 1, Tommy was driving through downtown Chicago, seemingly leaving to head to LA, when Rudolfo called Tommy again. When Tommy told Rudolfo, go f*** yourself. He's not coming. He doesn't work for nobody no more. And he was going to stay there and build his own shit and be his own boss. When he hung up the phone and threw it out the window so Rudolfo couldn't call him back, as he made a U-turn and went back to Chicago. But notice during this conversation, Tommy specifically told Rudolfo that he's not coming, not that he's not coming back. Again, leaving the question if Tommy has ever actually been to LA already or not. He also never told Rudolfo where he was at. At one point, he told Rudolfo not to worry about where he was. Then he told him he was going to stay there and build his own shit, but never actually revealed to Rudolfo where he was. So this leaves the question, where was Tommy and what was he doing during Season 1 of Ghost? And could this potentially be revealed in Season 3 of Force or Power Legacy? And there you have it, the missing chapter of Tommy's story. Let me know in the comments what you think Tommy was doing during this time, as well as your thoughts, theories, and predictions.